We can start our session now. Okay, very good afternoon to everyone and welcome to this World of Research Program webinar series 3, Art of Literature Review in Academic Work. Literature review is one of the most important process in writing your research papers or even your dissertation or even your thesis. So therefore, it's essential to put in more efforts in understanding the required skills in conducting literature review. So as you know, one of the major challenges faced by new research scholars is not knowing the basic concept of academic research. So in this world of research program is designed to support the academic research journey of a new research scholar and new postgraduate students. So ProQuest will be hosting more webinar series focusing on sharing the best practices and introducing you to some basic but very important academic research concepts. So before we move further, please take note that I have shared some important points in the chat box. So this training is estimated to go on for an hour. And if you notice, the audio is set one way. So if you have any question, please feel free to share it in the chat box and we will address your question towards the end of the session. Even if you're facing any audio issues, please let us know via the chat box as well. Yeah. So in the past weeks, some of you might have traveled with me on the webinar series of art of selecting the right resources and art of identifying the right keywords and effective searching research series. Yeah, and today is the third series that's on the art of literature review in academic work. And the next one, the fourth one, the final one, will be on the 22nd of April. That will be on art of accurate referencing in academic work. Okay. So I also would like to introduce myself. Very brief introduction about myself. So my name is Kurinji Malar, and I'm the training and consulting partner with ProQuest. I'm actually based in Malaysia. So as for me, working with or even supporting the academic institutions, the faculty members, the librarians, the researchers, or even students is something very, very close to my heart. So the next very interesting person that I'm going to share with you, we have for the very first time invited Mr. Sanjay Rajan, our senior training and consulting partner for APAC, to be the panelist in this session. He is currently based in New Delhi, and Mr. Sanjay, he has over 12 years of experience in information service industry, and he's the alumni of CSIR, NISCAIR, and he had worked on the green energy technology patents. Mr. Sanjay has presented his research works in conferences, and also his dissertation has been published in ProQuest Dissertation and Thesis Global. You can check it out later. At present, he is actively engaged in academic research work in management field. He is also a certified life coach and counselor. And along his professional journey, he has interacted with many scholars, students across APAC and UK, and he helped the academic institution in empowering their research and learning process. So we welcome Mr. Sanjay for this session. And of course, very importantly, if you have any questions with regards to your research or literature review, Mr. Sanjay will address the question later towards the end of the session. So please feel free to share your question in the chat box.
Thank you, Ms. Kunji, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for introducing. Thanks.
Okay, so the next part now, let's look at our objective today. So our objective today is to understand what literature review is in academic research and writing, and also understand why literature review is important in academic writing, and also we move forward looking at how to understand how ProQuest platform or ProQuest resources supports your literature review writing. And finally, we will also understand some of the major challenges and the misconception about literature review. And if you notice, we have also shared this in our brochure. This session is aimed at the new scholars who are embarking their research journey or in the midst of their research journey. Okay, now this is very interesting. And in one of our survey that we did some time ago, the finding shows that when we ask the students, what is your top challenges during your academic journey? So the answer is, they told us, okay, one of the top challenge that I face is to write a dissertation or thesis. Then we ask further. Yeah, they actually say yes. We are fear of the literature review, and we find that it is time consuming. So in the next one is, the finding the job become a second place. So in this session, this session is designed to demystify the understanding of the literature review process. Yeah. Okay. Now, literature review is associated as sole author of your academic journey. So as a researcher, you will have fundamental questions in your mind. Yes, fundamental questions, and this question has to be answered. So that you can embark further, you move forward with your research paper till you complete it. So it has to be answered. So some of those questions are like, has the topic and the approach has been previously studied? Is there any source which are focused and have comprehensive coverage than journal articles? From where can I get the relevant source of current up-to-date literature reviews with extensive bibliographics, in fact? What can be the best source of methodological and the theoretical approach to topic of interest, to topic of my interest? And also many other questions like, what are the specific sources which can provide recommendation for future research and etc. So there are about 8 or 9 or maybe more fundamental questions, playing in your mind before you start moving forward with your research. So now, how do I find the answers for these questions? Yeah, so it's very important. So let's look at the next slide. Okay. Now, you can always consult your library advisor to find those answers. You can also go to your peers, you can go to your supervisors, you can go to your advisors, your thesis advisor, or even if you go and consult the genius Professor Einstein, and guess what? All of them will give one answer, and the answer is engagement with literature review. You say, okay, yes, the answer, if you want to find the answers to those questions, you need to engage with literature. Yes, engage with literatures. Okay. Okay. Now, there are few stages in research or thesis writing, but in which stage that we need to engage with literature review? I'm sure this question have come across your mind. So there has been always misconception about literature review that it's a one engagement that it's only occurs one time. Yeah, that means it's one time of engagement, and it only occurs one time throughout the research journey, and it is one part of the research, usually at chapter 2. So this is some misconception. No, that is not correct. Actually, if you look at my slide, you will see that you need to take the support of literature review in every stage of your research. Yeah, whether your research or thesis or dissertation, in every stage you need to take the support of literature review. So right from the introduction stage, where you need to establish your foundation by explaining and justifying the purpose or the rationale of your research, till the conclusion to inform, support and justify your conclusion and contribution. So throughout the journey, you need to engage with your literature, and you need to take the support of the literature. So of course, in nutshell, engagement with literature is required every stage of your thesis or your dissertation writing process. So that is why we call this again as the soul of your research journey, your academic journey. Now, what is that? What is literature review in academic work? What is it all about? Okay, though when you first heard about literature review, it may sound difficult, may sound jargon to those new scholars, yeah. But and you're not able to illustrate, you're not able to imagine what is it all about. So now let's break it into two parts, yeah. So literature. So what is literature? Literature means it's collections of published information, materials of a particular area of your research, such as books, journal article, conference papers, working papers, dissertation, that provides key resources related to main debates, trends, gaps in the research area. Now, what is review? So review is you are able to identify from this literature, you are able to identify what has been established, what has been discredited, what has been accepted in the field, and what are the controversies, the conflicting factors among the different schools of thought, the viewpoints, and so on. And also problems or issues that remain unsolved, emerging trends and new approaches, and how research goes beyond, extends, builds on, and departs from the previous research for a future research. Yeah? So this is what you will be reviewing. So taking a literature, reviewing it to identify some of these factors that mentioned here, some of the points or information that I've shared here, it is called literature review. So on my right, there is also a little bit of summary on what is literature review. You can have a quick look at that. Now, when I say literature review means you present the summary or the description of the relevant sources. So when I read the literature, I summarize it and I just take the description of it and I just add it into my literature rating. Is that so? Is that all about literature review? So that's the question. Is the review of a literature present summary or description of a relevant source? Okay, no, the answer is no. Yeah, the answer is no, because a good literature review needs to go beyond summarizing or describing all the relevant literatures, and it needs to integrate the existing research by synthesizing, discussing the common and the emerging approaches, the notable the patterns, the trends, the area of conflicting area, the controversies area, the gaps within the literature review, within the relevant literature. So a literature review article provides comprehensive overview of literature related to a theme, theory, method, and synthesize prior studies to strengthen the foundation of knowledge. Yeah, so you know that it is not just a summary, just a description of what you found in the literature. Okay, so there are many different type of literature. So we have such as like the argumentative literature, argumentative review, integrative review, historical review, methodological review, systematic review, theoretical review, and so on. So the selection, which literature review should I do, should I take? So this all depends on your nature of your research. If your research is requiring historical perspective, then you need to go for the historical review, which will be more appropriate to you. So historical review, or historical literature review, focus on examining the research throughout a period of time. It's very timeline based and often goes way back, tracing the first time when the issue was encountered and tracing the evolution or the development of the discipline. Okay, this is another very interesting slide. These slides basically represent the common element in the literature review that is similar to the relay race. In the relay race, runners have to pass the baton to the next person to continue the race. Likewise, in research, when researchers found a gap in the current research, they will continue addressing the gap, the gap in the research to the next level. Hence, the research today is built upon continuity from the literature review engagement. So you to move forward or to meet the objective. Okay. So now why is literature review important? Yeah, very important. If we just have to go one more step. Okay, the very main purpose for us to do the literature review is to develop the logical case to establish a thesis or research paper. So it gives you evidence to justify the value and the need for your research. Okay, the rest, of course, I won't go through each and every points here. So it basically increases your breadth of knowledge in your area of research to gain a thorough understanding of your knowledge and ideas established on the topic. It's also uh, identify ideas and concepts from the literature related to academic work. On top of all that, you will also notice as you go on doing your literature review, engaging with your literature review, you will then avoid reinventing the wheel just by discovering the research that already been conducted on the topic. Okay, so we talk about research gap most of the time. Before I go further, I also would like to share another analogy um, that conducting any type of research or project without conducting literature review is associated as a traveling to a strange or exotic country, but never coming out of your room. So that's been associated. So you know how important is to engage with your literature so that you can understand the topic more holistically. So we always hear about research gap, find the research gap, how to find the research gap and things like that. So now there are different form of research gap. You need to understand the different type of research gap. Only then when you are reading or examining your literature, you will then you are able to identify, oh, this is the inconsistency in the report results, or this is a flaw in the design and things like that. So there are few. One of it is the lack of consistency. That means there's always inconsistency. You need to say, okay, it's not consistent, so I need to take this as a gap in finding taking this as a gap to move forward to address the research gap. Or you will see there's some flaws in the previous research based on the design, based on the data or the sampling or the interpretation. And sometimes this is very interesting. Another type of it is the population. So research might have been conducted on a different population in a different country than the one you are interested. So if you want to justify, then you justify your work with the different population. Okay, we are going to the next part of this session, that is to how to do a literature review. So in literature review, there are 4 stages in developing the literature review. The very first one is the problem formulation. Problem formulation is you need to decide on which topic or field is being examined, what are its components issues. So you need to know what are the components that need to be examined together with the main topics. Yeah. So as you go on examining the literature review, your components of your topic might expand or can be removed as you review more literatures to make sure that you are meeting the research question and the research topic. Literature search. Okay, so this is what I have covered in the previous 2 sessions. Yeah, how do you find the relevant materials to support your literature writing? So one is discovering the right sources, selecting the right sources, and also the other one is identifying the keywords and the effective search. I covered this in the last 2 sessions. Yeah, the third one is data evaluation. So determining which literature makes a significant contribution to the understanding of your research topic. So the process of examining or evaluating the literature is most crucial, where you need to apply your critical thinking skills, the synthesizing skills, and etc. And the final one is about analyzing and the interpretation. Yeah, basically you discuss the findings and the conclusion pertinent to your literature. Okay. Now, this illustration very, very interesting again. So these slides actually illustrate or shows that one, need to understand your research questions well, ins and out, so you can write the literature reviews that answers your question, your research question. So you really need to pay a lot of attention to the minor details when you are examining or you are evaluating that literature. You really need to pay a lot of important to the minor details. So our panelist, Mr. Sanjay, you always relate this to say that if you want to ride a horse, if you do not know your horse well, inside out, then surely your journey will not be comfortable, it will not be so smooth. So so it might take longer time for you to reach the destination. So that kind of analogy that Mr. Sanjay always share with me. Yeah. Okay. Now, once you have identified the research topic, the question is essential to evaluate, do you have enough sources? Do you have enough literatures to support your research? So it's always recommended to cast your net wider. Start searching from the library catalog or even your discovery services. I actually have covered all this in the previous session as well. You can go for the summon or the primo, then you can expose, you will be then exposed to right databases such as ProQuest database, eBook Central database with a collection of ebooks, Web of Science database, Springer, Wiley, and etc. So for you to go to the right database will lead you to find the right literatures. Okay, so you can also ask some recommendation for your library team to, the research guide in your institution. So now, once you go into the library catalog or the databases, you will be now exposed to wide variety of content type. So either we call that as a content type, source type, or literature. Then you will need to find and understand the sources or the characteristics, the characteristics of each individual sources. Why is important to understand? So that you can use the sources effectively to support your literature writing process. Okay. So you usually find a number of different type of sources. The one is the one you're very familiar is the print books. Yeah, you can find the physical books or the ebooks. Ebooks are usually provide substantial amount of information. It's in-depth, comprehensive information about the topic, and it's very well structured. And it's also easy to understand. The content is easy to understand. Okay. The next is the dissertation. Yeah, dissertation and thesis, or even if you can find conference papers, working papers, these are all known as grey literatures. These papers, it comes with in-depth analysis, and it's actually kind of definitely will provide you some support in analyzing or examining your literature. So I have shared in the detailed information about each of these sources in the last session. So I just move on giving some very quick examples here. Okay. So now we talk about newspapers. Newspapers is another interesting source to look at. Why? If you want to find information such as current issues, pressing issues, debates, so it will be a good primary source materials as a starting point of your research. You find this article, but you want to justify talking about, why is it a pressing issues, or why is a debate at present, and so on. So you can find it information from the newspapers or even magazines, and as well as the newspapers. Yeah, so it can be the historical newspaper as well as the current newspapers, and of course scholarly journals. Scholarly journals are is written by the professor in a particular field, and it comes with in-depth analysis with specific topics, and is published periodically and reviewed by the experts. So this is always recommended to be used as one of the literature in your literature writing process. Okay, now moving forward, you now have the idea of what sources, where do you go from macro point, from the library portal, you go into databases, you find some materials. Now material your sources. Now within the source, that they are always categorized into a few categorization. So they categorize as primary, secondary, and tertiary. So why we need to understand this classification, or to need to know which source belongs to primary source, which source to belong to secondary source, because some of this your requirements, in your, when you're writing your dissertation, when you're writing your literature review, there is always a requirement to say, okay, you need to include this type of sources. So it's very good for you to identify. It's good to know okay, which source belongs to which category. So primary source, what is it? Primary source, very simple. It's actually the first occurrence of a piece. If the material is for the first time, is occurring for the first time, established for the first time, then it's a primary source. Examples of primary source would be thesis and dissertation, conference papers, data, statistics, the acts, the regulations, and etc. And if you're talking about the secondary source is built upon the primary source. That means if a primary source is being annotated, being analyzed, and do a restatement of the primary source, then that is considered as a secondary literature. So the secondary literature, examples of its literature review articles are the secondary literature. Textbooks, journals, book reviews, biographies are all secondary literatures. And tertiary literature is very simple, very easy. So as long as those content are being indexed, compiled, digested, summarized, condensed, such as dictionaries, encyclopedia, index, handbooks, and etc., then you know that's all considered as the tertiary literature. Okay, now found the source. Now you also need to make sure that you need to do a quick credibility assessment, because some of you, if you are doing search on the open web, you really need to pay more attention to the content credibility. So if you find the information such as peer-reviewed journals, scholarly books by academic publishers, gray literatures, such as conference papers, dissertation, and theses, of course they are all highly credible sources. But if you are also you have to be also careful when you come to finding information such as blogs, personal websites. So you need to be more skeptical. Do you want to use this content? I think it's not advisable to use such content. It depends. If you just want to have some ideas, fine, but do not use those content into your literature writing. So just be careful on assessing the documents. So this is just a guide for you to look at that, especially when we receive information from the social media. I'm sure that most of you you will receive the information, but a few hours later or 30 minutes later, you will receive another information saying, oh, this is false news, this is a fake news. So it's not advisable to rely on those blogs, Wikipedia and so on. And the other one is the publication by, you need to identify this publication by whom. Is it advocacy groups such as activists group, political parties. So there's always have biasness. So you just have to make sure that you aware of all this. And actually there is a criteria. How do you want to evaluate your content? So I call this as a CRAAP, CRAP content, CRAP criteria. So that means first thing you look at is the currency. When was this information published? Was it published recently, or is it a long time ago? Is it this kind of information? But why is it important to evaluate that? But having said that, evaluating this also, you need to consider of what is your what is needed in your research. So for some of these written works, can be ageless. Can be ageless because some classic literatures, history literatures can be is ageless. So if you need to if your research is relevant to historical related research or classical related research, then of course the published date, the more it go way back, it's even better. So you have to just be careful and just map it accordingly to your research topic. And if your research is about the current technology issues, technological related issues, then you need to be really careful about the timelines, yeah, and the relevance. So of course, very important to check, okay, this is the literature I have, how relevant it is to me, does it answer my questions, my research question, all that very quickly evaluate. Although it's like, it sounds like a very long process here, but as you practice doing this evaluation in 1 or 2 or 3 literature, then it comes to you automatically. You don't have to worry about, going back to do a checklist again. So another one, remember we talked about the purpose, so we need to also make, check whether this, who actually have established this literature, what's the purpose of it, what's the motive behind it, educational, commercial, entertainment, promotional, right? Look at all that information. So why we just want to avoid the biasness in the information. Okay, so this is also some kind of advice or guide. When you have your topic, you make sure that you do have break it down into a schema, break it down with all the related components in the context of your research question. So in this example, this is about the customer loyalty. Yeah, any topic you pick, make sure you have your the schema written so that you are aware of other subjects that might have some connections or relationship. So understanding and answering research questions with the schema, or if you have a concept map, that you can see how each components are interconnected, then you can visualize the relationship between those components and the connection between all those components. Yeah. So if you take an example of this customer loyalty, you will realize that customer loyalty also have some connections with the customer disloyalty, service loyalty, loyalty supporting factors, loyalty repressing factors, and many more. Okay, this is very important, although it sounds a little bit you need to make this as a practice. So create a literature review matrix. Why I advise you to do this, it depends on you. As you know that when you find a suitable articles, it's always advisable to organize them into your citation management system. Either you have RefWorks, or you have EndNotes, or you have Mendeley, or any of your preferred the citation management system, the CMS system. Yeah. Why is that important? Because when you want to start evaluating and examining each of your articles, you need to highlight to make notes. Sometimes you will highlight, if you have the physical paper, you will highlight, and in an individual article. So when you start writing, you may not remember the points that you have made, and sometimes your information is everywhere. So if you want to apply apply the concept, the ideas that you have come up with, you may not be able to put it in a flow. So it's best to apply, it's best to create a literature review matrix so that you can quickly compare it, analyze it, easily spot the differences, the similarities, the patterns, so that you can easily synthesize, and when you are writing, you can articulate it effectively, and you have the good flow. Yeah. So some examples is like, you can put in something like that. Okay. So how the ProQuest resources support you? So some of you might be familiar with ProQuest platform. So if you go back to your library portal and you check with your library team, do I have a ProQuest related ProQuest database in our institution? So they will advise you. So some of those very common one is this ProQuest One Academic, which is a comprehensive database, including you can see that. Hold on a second. You can see the content like scholarly journals, books, video content, dissertation, and many other sources are also part of this collection. And this is a multidisciplinary database. Yeah, it's a multidisciplinary database, including this another platform, which is ProQuest Central. These are all multidisciplinary database, and it caters information for arts and humanities, the social sciences, the business and economics, health and medical, science and technology, engineering, mathematics related studies, and etc. and many more. And you also, in some institution, you might have this platform such as the ProQuest One Business, supporting specifically to the business, economic, finance, and investment related research. In that platform, in that database, you will see you will have even more content such as company reports, the newspapers, and etc. So you will find it. This is subject-based platform, and you will also have health research premium collection to support the health and medical related studies, and etc. Okay. Okay, so finding your literature is very simple, very easy from this platform. Is all that you need to do is, I'm not familiar, give me some ideas, ProQuest, if you come to this platform, and it will, all that you do is give me all the literatures that is being tagged under the subject of customer satisfaction. So then say, give me all the peer reviewed if I want to do the peer reviews, but you have actually more than that, all the types of resources that you can find here. You can see you have wire feeds to the scholarly journals, to the conference papers, to the dissertation, to the magazines, newspapers, and etc. Okay. Now, examining dissertations. This is, you can evaluate any literature, but this is just to show, how you do it with the dissertation. Of course, you look up for the titles, and then you get the abstract. So once you're convinced with the abstract, you can move forward to looking at the structures, the outline of this content, and you talk about the, you can focus on the limitations and the recommendation for futures, and look at how much contribution at this research has done, but what is the limitation? This is what you want to focus if you want to take to the next level of your research, finding the gaps and so on. Okay, now that's another idea, because I shared with you, you need to create, if you want to create a matrix, that would be great. So in this platform, if you download the content into your RefWorks, of course, you can do your citation management easily, but you can also download this content into Excel format. So you don't have to go and take your literature, pull out the title, enter into your matrix. You don't have to do that. This is already been built in. You just copy and paste into your matrix that you have created. Yeah? So just download into your Excel sheet. And lastly, that you can also find literature review, the type of documents, literature review, just to read or make it as a reference material. Okay, now we have come to the very last part of the session, but we have another part. Yeah, another part of this is to open up the session for a Q&A session. Hold on. If you have any question, please feel free to share it in the chat box. And Mr. Sanjay, as our panelist, he will be addressing some of those questions. So you just feel free to share your question in the chat panel. Yeah. Okay, I received thank you message. Yes, quite clear. Okay. Okay, copy of the slide will be sent to you. I have compiled all together. After this, all the 4 series, we will send it to you. Okay. Okay, so there's a question, how to be critical in literature review. Okay. Okay, I would just now call upon Mr. Sanjay. Mr. Sanjay, are you able to see the questions on the chat panel?
So yes, Mr. Anil, thank you so much. So I think there is one question I just found out. What is the significant difference of the literature review from a systematic review? This is the question.
Yeah, there's one more
Kiranji?
before that. How to be
Yeah.
critical in literature review? How
How?
to be critical in literature review?
Yes, yeah, thank you. So I think literature review, when you think about the literature review, it is a directly indirectly it is a critically, you have to do the critical literature review, and in critical literature review means that you have to see the different dimensions of, you have to explain, you have to analyze all the different dimensions, so that the overall objective is that to identify the right source of information, right piece of information for your article, for your thesis. So critical evaluation is very, very important, and that is, you can say, the soul of the literature review. Your literature review doesn't mean that you are just reading the article, reading the different documents, different newspaper articles. This is the very, very important that you should be critically. You have to review each and every document very, very critically. So that is the important thing you have to do. I think second question is the difference between the difference between the literature review and from a systematic literature
Yeah.
review. Yeah. So when you do the my colleague has already shared all the different aspects of the literature review, and you have observed that in the literature review you are going to discover, you are trying to discover the different set of the documents, different sets of the different databases that is coming through the different sources of the information. So in normal literature review, you are not putting any particular terms and condition. You have got a topic, you have finalized a topic, and you have started to search. But in the systematic literature review, you have to put the some terms and conditions. There is a concept of the inclusion and exclusion at every stage. When you have started to think about the writing your proposal, at the initial stage you have started to think about the proposal, then you will start to think about the selection of the title, then you have to write your abstract, then you have to write your different detailed explanation. At every stage you have to set some different set of the terms and condition. What is the meaning of the inclusion and exclusion? For example, you have search on like the you have seen in the slide like the customer loyalty. When you have started to search on the customer loyalty, you have to and also you see on the slides that there are the different set of the resources, like the primary sources, secondary sources, tertiary sources. And in context of your all the different resources, it is very, very important for you to just identify the right sources of information. I'd like to share. Can I share one slide with them so that I can
Yeah,
just
yeah,
explain
yeah,
it
sure.
very?
You hold on.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I think you can present it. Or do you want me to
Okay.
stop? Hold on a
No, I
second.
think.
Let me stop sharing.
Yeah, yeah. Sure, sure.
Um, yeah, I've made you as a presenter. You can share it now.
Sure. So next question is, when I did my degree literature review, my supervisor said there was no continuation of the study. Sure. So I'm sharing my screen with you. So I hope so you are able to see my screen now.
It's coming. Yes, it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when you think about it, I just talk about the inclusion and exclusion. Like if you see this particular slide, then at the initial stage, I'm just trying to just there are certain criteria that is followed in the systematic literature, that is the pico search strategy or the spider search strategy. The objective for all these different criteria is that at every stage, like at the preliminary stage, you have to, during the research question, when you are going to finalize the research question, you need to do some kind of a terms condition. Even if when you are going to selecting the resources, you need to select the ProQuest, you need to select the Scopus, or you need to go with the Google Scholar. You need to identify all those. Even after selections of all those resources, you need to again, just when you, for example, you have selected maybe 100 articles, 100 different articles from the different resources, maybe from the ProQuest, from the IEEE or the Science Direct. Even after selecting those resources, again you have to just define your criteria. Like for example, whatever the criteria you have defined, like maybe you are looking some particular document, like here, just like say here, for example, you have selected some particular document, maybe 100 document you have just selected. Based on the first criteria is that you are looking for documents from the Chinese language or maybe from the English language also. Now after collecting all those documents, you need to reduce them based on the criteria. What are the criteria? First thing is that I need only those documents which are related to the clinical trial. So those documents which are not from the clinical trial, we need to remove them. Also, I need to just define the criteria that it should be published in the only in the Chinese and English language. That is also one criteria. I have put this criteria. So all those documents which are coming from the different language, I need to remove them. Maybe it is also related that I need to identify, I need to want only those documents in those 100 selected full text documents which are related to the neurodegenerative diseases. So my context is that here that systematic literature review is a way for identifying the list of the resources, list of the articles based on the set of the different criteria which you are going to create based on your research question, which is missing in the normal literature review. So I think this is a quite helpful. Then the next thing is that most of the systematic literature review, if you talk about the systematic literature review, mostly it is applicable in the medical sciences. If you are a medical sciences student, it is a almost a mandatory kind of thing that you have to do the systematic literature review. But if you're from the social sciences student or some other subject student, then you can go with the normal kind of the search literature review. The second, why this is the third one criteria is that the basic difference is that in the systematic literature review, we are trying to identify that those documents based on the evidence means logical justified document. So these are the basic things. So systematic literature is a little bit higher side of the literature review, because medical science it is very critical to do a very I think relevant kind of research. You need to also consider all the different dimensions of the details of some diseases, some kind of patients also. So systematic literature is mostly relevant for the students or the researcher scholars who are doing the research work in the medical sciences. So that will be helpful for you.
Okay, I hope
One next question is
Sanjay.
that
Yeah, there are a couple of questions, Sanjay. There are quite number of questions. Hold on.
yeah. So I think how one question is that I received here. When I did my degree literature review, my supervisor said that there was no continuation of their story. Does that mean the topics are not related? Yes, that is very important thing. I think your supervisor is very right that if there is a not any flow in your story, in your all the different things, that can be, I think, a something is wrong in your literature review. Now I'd like to share one I think that can be helpful for you. Before that, I just go through the question. The next question is, how would you know that you have enough gather related literature to your searches?
Hold on, Sanjay.
So
Before that, there's actually one more
yeah,
question that's on,
yeah, please.
it's from Lisa. May I know how much length of literature review need to be done? I think that's also a question on that.
Yeah.
And secondly,
So
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So, like that, what kind of the exact number of the literature we have to do? This is this. There is, if you ask from any experts or any scientists or any researcher scholars, everyone can tell that there is no criteria. There is no limitations that you have to do 100 literatures, or maybe the 200 or 300 or 500. It depends on your question. It depends on your research question. If you got the length, or if you find a flow in the 50 different literature review, like for example, recently I'm working on one particular topic in the management field, and I have gone through around more than 1,000 articles. Can you believe that more than 1,000 articles I have just explored that, and just to find the consistency, that's just to find the flow, that's just to find the dimensions of that particular in context of my research work. So there is no limitation. Sometimes it can be 10 articles can be also enough for you, 20 articles can be enough for you, or maybe in sometimes to discover the right kind of the context, you need to the also go beyond the 500 600 articles. Now why I'd like to justify this particular things. I think most of the questions are related to the context. So I just to share one more important things with you that can be helpful for you to get the answer. What is the literature review actually? Why, how you can decide that what can be the relevant number of the articles which you need to consider. So I hope so you are now able to see my screen.
Yeah. Yes, Sanjay, yes.
Yeah, just a minute, I think. So basically, what is the objective for your research, your literature review? The basic idea is that either some of you are going to write some dissertation thesis, maybe some of you are going to present some paper in the conferences, and maybe some of you are going to write some research paper. These are the basic three things where you are going to just to work around that. And if you see the most of the in all the three, either you are going to write a dissertation or maybe going to write a paper, the most important requirement for all of you is that the information. Information is important, but the major missing thing in all this thing that if you understand the nature of the information, If you want to know the number of the articles, if you want to know the length of the, you can say the literature review, you need to understand the nature of the information. Because if you see what is your research paper, what is your thesis, it is nothing but the permutation and combination of the different pieces of information. And if you have not the understanding of the information, then maybe the 1,000 articles can be not enough for you. Or maybe if you understand the nature of the information, then it can be maybe you can identify the flow for your research within a 20 or 30 articles. Now, what is the meaning for the nature? So for example, if you want to understand the nature of the information, then each and every piece of information, either you are a researcher scholars or a students from the medical science, social science, or maybe any other subject area, if you are taking any piece of information, then every piece of information has a different layers. Like if you are seeing this picture, in this picture you are getting a different types of the layers, one layer, two layer, three, a multi-dimensions layer. Maybe at a point you decide that yes, this is my layer, this is the dimension where I have to work. In different layers, you have selected one layers where you have to work. But even after selecting this particular layer, when you have just fixed that this layer, maybe you have identified this layer after going through maybe the 100 articles or maybe the 20 articles. When you got this particular insight that is, this is my dimension where I have to work, then that is the you can say that you can get an idea that yes, now my literature review, I can stop to do my literature review. But again, one important thing is that you need to also understand, and I think that will be very, very important for you, that after deciding that this is the context, this is the insight where you have to work. But one important thing you need to understand that in every domain, even if you have decided that yeah, this is my domain where I want to do my research work, in even that particular domain, there are the two things can be happen. One thing is that there may be some piece of information that can be rational for you and that can be irrational for you. To identify, it is very, very important to identify, because like my colleague has mentioned very important word. If I think I'm not sure many of you have observed that particular statement or not. She has mentioned that about the biasness of the different information. There may be biasness, maybe whatever the articles I have identified in this particular zone, there may be some biasness, and those articles I need to, for in context of my research work, I need to identify only those particular documents or information which can be the rational piece of the information. And for that, you need to, beyond I think if you try to understand the nature of the information, then also you need to understand the context of the information. You need to understand the dimension of the information also. What is the meaning in the practical sense is that, for example, if you are going to work on the quality, if I'm talking about the quality, I think maybe everyone has got some kind of a sense that what is the meaning of the quality of the research paper, quality of your work, quality of your all the activities. There you have, everyone has some sense for you. But if you think terms of the research work, then you need to connect with all those different dimensions. Means some of the scholars have seen this particular quality in a transcendental definition format, maybe philosophical perspective. Maybe some of them had just identified that product based definition. Maybe it can be seen in the scholarly context from the manufacturing point of view. Maybe some of them have seen from the user's point of view. Maybe some have seen from the value based definition. So the topic is the same. Quality is the only one topic on which I have decided to work, you have decided to work. But when you think from the research perspective, there you are getting for the same definition, for the same topic, you are going to get 5 different types of definition. Maybe it can be 6, 7, 8 dimension. Now, as a research scholar, you have asked one question, that how many articles can be sufficient for me? When you are going to do the literature review, you can get an insight that maybe your research work is related to the value based or the user based or the manufacturing based. If you got the identification that, then you can have to reduce your literature review directions in this one particular context. So it is very, very important to identify that in which context you are going to research. For example, I have selected the product based. So now the next thing is, my topic is I'm going to work on the quality of the product and services. In that particular, even after selecting the quality in context of the product and services, when I explore the product and so now my next level of the literature review is that I need to explore all the literature in terms of the product and services. And when you explore this product, quality of the product, quality of the services, then again in quality of the product we have the 8 different dimensions. We have if you think from the services, we have the 5 different dimensions. I have identified this particular article from dimensions from this particular article. So when you do the literature review, when you just consult the different literature review, your major job is that you need to identify all the different dimension, what context, different types of the, you can say, the information what has been researched related to that particular topic. Now, the next stage is that why the literature review is important. I think, again, I'm just going that how you can identify that your literature review is now on the final stage. Now, if you see here that I have started from the quality. Now I'm just trying to identify the quality of the product and services. Now, maybe the many of you have a topic like that, that impact, if you just finalize the topic like the influence of the quality of the product service on the bank reputation. Now here, I have identified from the different sources, I have started from the quality and I have just gone through the identify my dimension, and this dimension is related to one dimension. For example, I have selected one dimension, then I have selected the different dimension within that particular context. And then now it is very, very important that the next level of literature review is for identifying the relationship between the different component or different dimensions you have identified. Like for example, in a very, very layman language, for example, if I ask that, if I ask from you, who are you? Then maybe you can just tell me that my name is this, I am from this particular university. This is this your complete dimension, complete information about yourself? No, never. It is just a one dimension of yourself. I'm interacting with you that with a one dimension that you are a student from this particular university, your name is this. But maybe, yeah, you have some other dimension also. Maybe you are the brother for someone, maybe you are the daughter for someone, maybe you are the friend for someone, maybe you are the son for someone. They are also different dimensions. But at this particular moment, I cannot talk with you in terms of that you are son for someone, or maybe your daughter for someone, or maybe your friend for someone. At this time, I need to establish a relationship between you and me based on that, because you are a student, I'm also a student or research scholars. You are also research scholar. This is the one relationship. So when you are defining the different components, it is important for you that next level of literature review, you also do the literature review to identify the relationship between the different components. And if you see here in this example, this is the product quality, this is the service quality. And if you see the different component here, these are the two different components which are also related to the product quality and the service quality. But many of them, these are the three only related to the service quality. So what is the logic? You need to find the flow of the logical consistency. When you find the flow, when you find the logical consistency in the different component, at that particular moment, you can stop your literature review. That is when, but it doesn't matter. You cannot define that. You can't this logical consistency in 10 article, 20 article, 30 article. It depends on your nature of the questions, nature of the topic, what you are going to work on that particular thing. And this can be possible only when you start to go to think beyond your limitation, see beyond the limitation, what others have done. Like my colleague has told that there are so many resources, so many research scholars, so many faculty members have already researched and just published different literature related to the your topic. It is important for you that you need to go beyond. Literature review means, if you see the very layman language, what is the literature review? Literature review is that simple thing is that trying to see the beyond your limitation, beyond your wall. And when you start to do this particular thing, then only at this particular moment you are able to connect the broader dimension of that particular research. What is the research? When you select your title, your title is like this very small thing, one liner. Your title is not more than the two line. But when you finish your topic, like one of you asked, what is the number of the pages, or how many pages I need to write in particular my thesis or my thing. It may be 200, it may be 300, but depends on that how you are creating the story. And this broader dimensions can be only visualized if you are going to connect with the different types of the literature, different type of the universe which has been created by the other researcher scholars through their different research. Then only you can identify. Then if you try to go in that particular direction, then you can identify the gap, inconsistency, research gap, and based on that you can just formulate things. So major important thing is that flow. Identify the flow, identify the consistency, and whenever you find that particular thing, you can stop your literature review.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope so. You got the answer.
Yeah, Sanjay, oh, we go for the next question. I think this next question is, what pattern can I follow when conducting a literature review? And from the same person, you have a question on, how do I synthesize my literature?
I need a when I
You can see right after the how much length.
in research articles introduction section has some part of literature review. How much sections should it cover of the in research article introduction section has some part of literature review. How much sections should it cover the
Okay, let
introduction
me share
section?
this
Yeah,
question to you,
yeah,
Rodon. Maybe it was
yeah.
sent to me
So
directly. Do you see that question?
so in so as per the format, it depends on the like this question has been asked by Mr. Liaquat. So yes, introduction section has some part of the literature review, but it depends on. I think what is the introduction? In introduction, you cannot include all the different parts of the different parts of the your literature review. It is just like a give a glimpse of the literature review. What actually you have to identify through the literature review means it can be definitions, it can be the different dimension, it can be the different context, it may be also related to some gaps. So in introduction, just give a glimpse of that particular whatever the your story you have to create it. It's just like a you are giving a main theme of the whatever the theme you have identified, whatever the main I think consequences you have identified in the literature review. You can give it just a small you can the visualizations of your identification in your introduction. You can leave your WhatsApp number. I'm Chinese. I'm interested in the meta analysis. I hope we can communicate after this seminar. Could you kindly provide a certificate? What pattern I can follow when yes. What pattern can I follow when conducting a literature review? Uh, in that context, it is very important. I think my colleague has been just showing the slide of the horses and the mountains. That you can identify the so pattern cannot be, I think, predefined. It depends on the research question. When you started to explore, like for example, I have shown the one example of the quality, and when I started to start from the quality, then I have to find some different definition when different types of the pattern that is existing in the different literature. So you need to identify that in which pattern you want to work, which pattern can be the relevant for your research question, through which pattern you can feel that this pattern, if I follow this pattern, I believe I will get the answer of my research question. Most important thing is that research question, there is no fixed pattern. If I'm working on the quality, I already saw that there are 5 different pattern. Maybe some have do the research work from the user's perspective, some has done from the product perspective, some from the manufacturing perspective. Can I say that only the product perspective can be the relevant for my research work on the quality? Maybe not. Maybe if it is relevant for me, maybe not relevant for you, or maybe not relevant for the other person. So everyone has a different perspective. You need to find the pattern based on your research question. And that's why the slide which has been shared by my colleague, that you need to focus, you need to put attention, you need to spend some time with your research question. And the research question is like the horses. If you know the research question, your journey will be comfortable. If you do not understand the research question, then you never ever find the right kind of the path, right kind of the understanding about the journey, or like that. So for getting a pattern, it is important for you to just focus on the research question, and based on that identify. If I'm telling that is this pattern can be important for you, no, that will be the wrong answer for you. That will be like a misguiding to you. Your pattern can be identified only in context of your research course. Context is very important. Like for example, just take a second example. For example, if your mother tell you that just go to the market and just purchase some vegetables, and you just went to the market. In the market, we identify the 100 different shops are there. You have identified one shop, and within that shop you have identified some vegetables. Your mother told that just purchase the vegetables, but in that shop there are so many vegetables. Which vegetable you will purchase? How you can identify that? Which vegetables your mother was looking for from? It depends on the research question. Your research question is like your mother of all your research work. If you understand your research question, then only you can identify the right vegetable as per the choices of your mother. So research question is very, very important. I think any other questions? I am not able to see some other
Yeah,
questions
hold
there.
on a second. Yeah, there's a couple of questions. I think there are questions such as like, assuming my research is not on historical research, how many
Yeah.
years can I include on my literature review to be more timely or relevant? Is there a rule in terms of the length of literature review? I think this has to, I can answer this question. Sanjay, basically this is depends on, again, back, like Sanjay said, go back to your research question, look at what is your purpose, what is your, what do you want to,
Yes.
establish in your research. So going back to that, then you can say, okay, I can look at the last 10 years of, content, or if the content even way before, if it's like, it's like supporting your research, you're finding the information that is actually establishing information to support your research questions or your research concepts, then I think that's fine. And the length of it, usually you need to go back to your advisors, because every time there's a guideline in every institution that's saying, okay, this is the guideline of your whole project paper. So your literature review should be given like how many pages. There's always a guideline to that. And there's another question on questions such as, hold on. Or otherwise, you can go ahead, Sanjay, if you find some question.
Any questions? Of any further questions?
You hold on, because it's all mixed up. Hold on.
So just in addition that you have just in just addition to your answer, uh, if you want to, just for example, like if you see the literature review or the research question, like for example, I have to visit the Malaysia, for example, and if I ask the questions from you that how many days I require to reach the Malaysia, how many days I need to require, or how many days I need to spend in the Malaysia, how I can identify that, how many days I have to spend? It depends on the objective. It depends on the in the question. What kind of solution I am going to? I'm when I the two things are very important. That what is my problem? Maybe I want to visit Malaysia for a business purpose, or maybe my business meetings can be finished in 2 days, or maybe my business meeting can be finished in a week. So my problem is most important thing for which I want to want to find a solution. If my if for example I were to visit, I have the multiple options. I can go by flight, I can go by train, I can go by the different vehicles. So the major thing is that what is my problem, how I want to just find that particular solution. And literature review, when you do the literature review, then you can identify that maybe the flight can be the best option, but maybe the other options are also available. Which options can be relevant as per your choices? When it comes in the choices, like the problem, maybe you are financially not very sound. Maybe you are not able to afford the flight. Then what is the option? You need to adopt the different mode of the traveling. So important is the question. Everything is guiding to the question, research question. And your research, if you just spend some time with the research question, then you can find each and every answer that you should adopt the flight, you should go to the flight, you should have spent 7 days in the Malaysia, or you should have spent the 1 month in 1 month in the Malaysia. This is very, very important. And if anyone is giving to a right answer, that is 100 page can be important, can be perfect, 200 page can be perfect. Like for example, there is one person who has done his PhD work in 2010, and I have gone through his thesis, and it's just a 90-page thesis, just 90 page. And I also saw the many theses where I found the more than 300 pages, more than 300 pages. Can you say that 90 pages was the not perfect thesis, or the 300 pages was the perfect? And I just explored the history of that particular person. Now that person who has done his PhD in 2010, now he's one of the most world-known faculty member, thinker on the management. And every person who is doing a management research, they are using the metrics that has been proposed by that particular author in 2010. Important is that what kind of the problem you want to solve through your research work. So that's why it is very, very important for you that you need to connect your research questions with some problem and then try to find a solution. You will get the answer for that.
Okay, Sanjay, you can refer to your chat box. I
Yeah, I
have
think,
forwarded
yes,
some of the questions to you.
yes, I got, yes, I got the questions. Uh, do I have to mention what kind of literature review that I will use in the introduction part? No. Yes, yes, I think you can mention some part that what kind of what kind of literature you are going to consult, because logical justification is very, very important in introduction also, in literature review also, in conclusion also. Because even if you're saying that I am going to select, based on my research question, I have selected this particular definition or this particular kind of the concept, then you have to give a logically justification. So for example, you're asking about the literature review. Surely you need to, I think, give some hint, some kind of the idea that why you have selected this particular pattern of the literature review. It is important. So you can just little bit, you can just mention that. You can mention the author's name also, like you can cite that particular author's name, their year name in the introduction also. That can be helpful for making a more validations for your research work. In research article introduction section has some part. I just got that question. Do you have an example of an article that is good example for the literature review? Yes, I have the different literature review. You can uh, yeah. So I think if you go to any particular site, like my colleague has mentioned about the ProQuest, you can go there. And if you want to cite a literature review, a good example of the literature review, then you can find many articles there. So if you don't need to focus on the which article is good for the literature review. You need to identify the which are the criteria for the best criteria for the literature review. I'm going to share one more slide with you. I think you can find the answer of your question in that particular context. What can be the best pattern for the literature review? So just hold me. I hope so you are able to see my screen. Yeah. Uh, Kunji, are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, yes, yes, Sanjay. So
Yeah, sure.
I think we have, I think maybe another 2 or 3 minutes. We actually
Yes,
overtook about 11
yes,
minutes.
yes. Yeah.
So
So one more important thing is that if you want to identify the right sources of the literature review, then the laddering techniques. There is a technique that is called the laddering technique. That is very, very important for anyone. Like, what is your objective? Your objective to identify, to just make a write a impactful research paper or thesis paper. That will be directly dependent on your language of the expression. Your language of expression is directly dependent on the your insight, and your insight is directly dependent on your context that is coming through the, and your context is coming through the different kind of things like that. So if you're trying to find the best literature review, some paper which have given the best literature review, always identify that which article has mentioned about the context, which article has mentioned about also included the insight, also included the language of, you can just identify the language of expression, which you should just visualize their language through their language of expression. Then you can identify the very, very important thing, that means those articles which have consulted all the literature in a very, very broader sense, which try to capture the insight, which have not only captured the information or concept, which have also tried to capture the context, insight, then only that article can be important for you. So it is important. And also one important thing is that for the literature review, you need to also connect your those articles which have connected in context of the some global challenges, in context of that particular article, that can be also very, very important literature review for you. And one more important thing is that those literature review can be the best, which are very simple, which are very logical, and in very, very honest way. That they also mentioned that, yeah, yeah, they will also mention that the limitation in the literature review. So those literature review which have not mentioned, which have mentioned their limitation, which have mentioned the logical justification, which are very simple, and which have captured the context inside, that can be the best literature review. And it can be any article. So you need to just focus on this thing, not the length of the literature review, not the size of the literature review, but these are the different elements that can be the important part of it. I hope so you got the answer.
yeah. So for those who, if you feel your questions are not addressed, not to worry. You just email to me. I have shared my email address in this chat box. Yeah, just email to me, and we will address your question in the email directly to you. Because of the time limitations, I think we already surpassed about 14 minutes. So if you have any question, and if it's not addressed, please share it directly to my email. Yeah? And with that, I would like to thank Mr. Sanjay for spending your time sharing with you your experience and your knowledge on writing literature review in academic research. So I'm really thankful on behalf of the audiences as well. And for the audiences who have joined today, thank you so much. I think you have posted many questions. The session was very engaging, and I will be continuously conducting this type of session. So if you think that if you want to have many other different sessions, please share with me some of your suggestions so we can work out something for you on a different topics and to just support your research. So with that, I thank you all of you again and again, and have a great weekend. See you all soon.
Thank
See you
thank you
all
so
soon
much,
in
Glen.
next session here.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for sharing your questions and the concerns with this particular thing. And we will be always in touch. If you have any questions, like my colleague has told, that you can just share at any point of time your all the questions and everything. So I think uh, with this, we are so grateful that you have spent some time with us and invited me. Thank you, thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Yeah. So I've also shared the link to the survey, post-webinar survey question in this session in the chat box. Please feel free to give your views and your feedback. Yeah. Thank you, and have a great day ahead.